Imagine raising your only daughter with love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights, only for her to cash out $33 million dollars and hand you an eviction notice. That's exactly what happened to me. But just 3 days later, the tables turned and she was the one begging for mercy. This is the story of greed, betrayal, and a reckoning worth $33 million dollars. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. My daughter handed me an envelope that felt foreign in my hands. It was thick, creamy cardstock, and it smelled of some expensive, cloying perfume that seemed to suck all the familiar, comforting scents right out of my own home. The faint aroma of lemon polish, the lingering hint of last night's meatloaf, the simple, clean smell of laundry dried in the sun. It felt utterly alien against my work-roughened skin. For 30 years, these hands had been a nurse's hands, scrubbed raw, strong enough to lift patients, gentle enough to hold the hands of the dying. These same hands had held my daughter, Chloe, through fevers and heartbreaks and nightmares that only a mother's presence could soothe. They had typed out endless overtime shifts at the hospital, the keys clicking a weary rhythm that paid for her business degree. And now, the daughter those hands had built stood in my doorway. But she was a stranger. She was draped in a tailored white pantsuit so sharp it could probably cut glass, an outfit that undoubtedly cost more than my monthly mortgage. She didn't look like my Chloe. She looked like a glossy magazine cover come to life. "Aren't you going to open it, Mom?" Her voice was different, too. A smooth, polished instrument devoid of the warm, laughing tone I had cherished my whole life. It was the voice she used for business, and hearing it directed at me in my own living room made my heart contract. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I carefully slid a finger under the flap, the expensive paper resisting for a moment before giving way. Inside, there was no letter, no card, just a single, crisp check. My eyes, tired from a long shift, took a second to focus on the number of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. $100,000. The figure seemed to dance on the page, meaningless and terrifying all at once. "Chloe," I stammered, my heart beginning a frantic, heavy thud against my ribs. What is this? Did you get some kind of bonus?" My mind raced, trying to find a logical, innocent explanation for this obscene amount of money being handed to me like a party invitation. A cold, sharp smile touched her lips, not quite reaching her eyes. Something like that. "A venture capital firm bought my startup. The deal closed this morning. My share was $33 million. The number didn't just hang in the air. It exploded, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. 33 million. It was vast, incomprehensible. A seismic shift in the universe. And then the first emotion hit me. A surge of dizzying, overwhelming pride. My God, she'd done it. All the sacrifices, the years of mac and cheese dinners, the secondhand textbooks, the relentless hard work. It had all paid off in a way I could never have dreamed. Tears of pure joy welled in my eyes, blurring the image of this beautiful, successful woman my little girl had become. "Oh, my darling girl." I breathed out, the words thick with emotion. I moved instinctively to hug her, to feel the solid reality of her triumph, to share in this miraculous moment. "I'm so proud of you." She took a slight, almost imperceptible step back. The movement was small, a mere shifting of weight, but it felt like a vault door slamming shut right in my face. My arms fell back to my sides, empty. "I'm proud of me too, Mom," she said, her tone cool and businesslike, as if she were addressing a junior employee. "And that check is my thanks for everything. It's more than generous, I think you'll agree." Generous? The word felt like ash in my mouth. "Chloe, you don't have to thank me. I'm your mother." "Which is why I'm doing this the nice way," she interrupted, her gaze sweeping over the living room. Her eyes lingered on the worn but clean sofa, the family photos crowding the walls, the crocheted blanket my own mother had made thrown over the armchair. I saw her nose wrinkle, just a fraction, as if she'd caught a whiff of something unpleasant. This chapter is over for me. I'm moving to a penthouse in Manhattan. My new life requires a clean break. From all of this, a cold dread, sharp and immediate, began to creep up my spine. "A clean break?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. What does that mean, Chloe? She met my eyes then, and hers were flat, devoid of any warmth or remorse. It means I need you to be out by the end of the month. The house is in my name, after all. I'll be putting it on the market. My world tilted on its axis. The floor beneath my feet felt suddenly unstable. The house. Yes, it was in her name. A desperate decision made a lifetime ago, after my husband David's long illness had left my credit in ruins. We'd sat in that lawyer's office, just the two of us, a team against the world. She'd been so young, but so fierce holding my hand. It's just paper, Mom, she had promised, her voice firm with a conviction that belied her years. It will always be our home. Nothing will ever change that. Now, that piece of paper was a weapon, and she was wielding it with brutal precision. You're throwing me out? The words were a choked whisper, barely audible. Chloe, this is my home. My friends are here. My whole life is here. Your father, his memory is in these walls. And you can start a new one, she said, her finality chilling. She picked up her designer handbag from the console table where she'd laid it. $100,000 is more than enough for a deposit on a lovely little apartment for someone your age. Consider it a retirement fund. She glanced at her watch, a slim, diamond-studded thing that glittered coldly under the light. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a helicopter tour of the city with the architects. We're discussing the interior design for the penthouse. She turned, her movements efficient and crisp, and walked out. The sound of her heels on the porch steps was a series of sharp, final cracks, like bones breaking. I stood frozen in the spot where she'd left me, the weight of her words pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. The $100,000 check fluttered from my numb fingers, landing face up on the floor. It wasn't a gift. It was a paltry, insulting payment for a lifetime of love and the price of my own eviction. I was still standing there, staring at nothing, when I heard the purr of her expensive car engine start and fade away into the distance, taking my daughter with it. The 3 days that followed were a blur of numb, mechanical agony. I moved through the rooms of my home, like a ghost, packing a life I no longer had a claim to. Every object I wrapped in newspaper was a memory that cut deep. Here was the chipped mug with the lopsided heart that Chloe had made me in kindergarten, her small hands clumsily shaping the clay. It's for your coffee, Mommy, because I love you this much. I could still hear her little voice. There was the photo from our one big vacation to the Grand Canyon, taken just a year after David died. We were both squinting into the sun, our arms around each other, pretending to be brave for the other's sake. I paused at the window overlooking the backyard. The oak tree we'd planted together when Chloe was 7 was now tall and strong, its branches stretching toward the sky. We'd watered it together, cared for it, watched it grow. It felt like a symbol of us. Now, some stranger would likely look at it and see only a tree that dropped too many leaves in the fall. My friends called, their voices crackling with outrage and sympathy. Brenda from next door, Sarah from the hospital, they all offered spare rooms, couches, unwavering support. I thanked them, my voice hollow, and refused. The humiliation was a thick, woolen blanket smothering me, making it hard to breathe. For years, I had been the proud mother, boasting about my brilliant, successful daughter. Now I was the fool, the cautionary tale, the mother who had given everything only to be tossed aside, like yesterday's garbage. I couldn't face their pity. I couldn't admit the depth of my own child's betrayal. On the second day, the numbness began to recede, replaced by a raw, aching grief that was so physical it felt like I was being torn in two. I was packing up Chloe's old room, the room where she dreamed her big dreams and now felt like a tomb. I was emptying the closet, pulling down boxes of old stuffed animals and high school yearbooks, when my hand brushed against something heavy and dusty at the very top shelf. It was an old cardboard file box, warped with age and humidity. I had to stand on my toes to wrestle it down. A cloud of dust motes danced in the sunlight as I lowered it to the bed. It was labeled in my late husband's familiar, neat block letters, tax stuff, MOM. I frowned. I didn't remember this box. David had always been the organized one, the keeper of our important documents. After he died, I'd been so lost in grief, I'd probably just shoved it up there and forgotten it existed. With a sense of morbid curiosity, I lifted the lid. It wasn't full of tax returns. It was a treasure trove of our shared history. Our old mortgage papers, his engineering degree, my nursing license, our passports from a long ago trip to Ireland. It was a time capsule of the life we'd built together. And at the very bottom, tucked away as if hidden, was a thick, legal-sized envelope yellowed with age. My hands began to tremble as I pulled it out. There was no label. I slid my finger under the sealed flap and broke the brittle paper. The first thing I saw was the title, typed in a familiar, old-fashioned font, Preliminary Business Plan. The Digital Watering Hole, a concept for location-based social connectivity. My breath hitched. David's old pet project. His digital watering hole. He'd tinkered with it for years, his engineer's mind fascinated by the idea of people connecting based on where they were. But it wasn't a printed document. It was the original, handwritten draft. Page after page of detailed market analysis, complex financial projections, intricate diagrams of app architecture, all in David's precise, technical script. I traced a finger over his handwriting, a sudden, sharp longing for him piercing my heart. Then my eyes fell on the last page. Stapled to the back was a separate, shorter document. It was a statement of concept, formally notarized and signed by David. It explicitly attributed the original intellectual property and business model for a location-based social media platform to David Clarion. The date at the bottom made my blood run cold. It was from years before Chloe had even started college. The pieces crashed together in my mind with the force of a physical blow. David, the dreamer, the innovator, had died before he could bring his idea to life. Chloe, the savvy business major, had found his notebooks. She hadn't just been inspired by him. She had taken his fully formed, notarized concept, the very papers I now held in my shaking hands, and presented it as her own original work to secure the venture capital. She had never mentioned his name, never given him credit. She had built her $33 million empire on a foundation of stolen ideas and lies. The grief and humiliation that had been crushing me evaporated, burned away by a cold, fierce fire that ignited in the center of my chest. This wasn't just greed or ingratitude. This was a profound betrayal of her father's memory, of the very man whose genius had funded her lavish new life. She had erased him. I looked at the $100,000 check, still lying on the floor where I'd dropped it. It wasn't just an insult to me. It was a desecration of David's legacy. I didn't have money for a long court battle. I didn't have a high-priced lawyer. But I had this. I had the truth. And suddenly I had a purpose. With meticulous care, I used my phone to photograph every single page of the business plan and the notarized statement. I emailed the scans to myself and saved them on a cloud drive. Then I placed the originals carefully into my own suitcase, not into a cardboard box destined for storage. This was my ammunition. Finally, I bent down and picked up the check. I smoothed out its crumpled surface. She thought this could buy my silence, my compliance, my dignity. She was wrong. I needed a different kind of professional. I needed a ghost from my own past. I found my ancient address book and flipped to the O section. My finger landed on a name I hadn't dialed in 20 years. I took a deep, steadying breath and punched the numbers into my phone. It rang 3 times before a man answered, his voice a familiar, gravelly rumble. "O'Malley. Marty?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Marty, it's Martha Clarion." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. "Martha? My God. Is everything all right?" The concern in his voice was immediate and genuine. Marty O'Malley, a former investigative journalist turned elite private investigator, and a man who, since our high school days, had never quite hidden his soft spot for me. "No, Marty," I said, my eyes fixed on the photograph of David on my nightstand. "Everything is very far from all right. I need a favor, a big one, and I need your absolute discretion." On the other end of the line, I heard his chair creak as he leaned forward, the journalist in him instantly intrigued. "Anything for you, Martha. You know that. What do you need?" A cold, determined smile touched my lips for the first time in days. I need you to help me make a digital ghost, I said. And I need to make my daughter an offer she can't refuse. For 3 days, I heard nothing from Chloe. The silence was its own kind of agony, but it was now fueled by a new, simmering anger instead of despair. I imagined her in her new world, a glittering carousel of luxury where she was the golden ringmaster. I could picture her penthouse in Manhattan, a sterile masterpiece of glass and steel with panoramic views of Central Park that held no memories of a family. She'd be spending her days in meetings with interior designers, her nights at exclusive clubs where a bottle of champagne cost more than my first car. The $33 million would be burning a hole in her designer purse, and the $100,000 she tossed at me would be nothing more than a forgotten, petty expense, a small fee to sever the anchor tying her to a past she was so eager to forget. Her future was a bright, clean, expensive line, and I had been neatly edited out of the picture. I kept busy. I met with Marty in a quiet corner of a diner far from our neighborhood. He'd aged well, his hair more silver than red, but his eyes were still the same sharp, intelligent blue. He listened, his expression growing grimmer and grimmer, as I laid out the whole sordid story, the eviction, the check, and finally, David's business plan. When I showed him the notarized document, he let out a low, impressed whistle. Damn, Martha. David was always ahead of his time, he said, a note of respect in his voice. Then his eyes hardened. And Chloe, she just took it? Presented it as her own. She erased him, Marty, I said, my voice tight. She built her entire fortune on his grave and then threw dirt on mine. Marty nodded, his mind already working, connecting dots I couldn't even see. All right, here's what we do. The legal route is messy. She'll tie you up in courts for years, and even with this, he tapped the document, it's her word against a dead man's. We need to apply pressure, somewhere she can't ignore. We go after the two things she cares about, her money and her reputation. His plan was elegant and brutal. He had a contact, a white hat hacker he trusted implicitly, a young woman named Iris who believed in digital justice. We're not going to steal anything, Marty explained. We're just going to change the locks. Make it clear that her empire has a back door she knows nothing about. And then we'll introduce her to the ghost in her machine. I signed the $100,000 check over to Marty to cover his time and Iris's unique skills. It felt poetic, using Chloe's hush money to fund her own downfall. We waited. The plan was to trigger it on the 4th day, the day she would likely be feeling most secure, most triumphant. I was scrubbing my kitchen floor, trying to physically exhaust the nervous energy coursing through me when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marty. A single word. Now. I didn't know what was happening in that moment, but I could imagine it. I could feel it. Somewhere in a sleek Manhattan high-rise, the carousel of Chloe's new life was shuddering to a violent, catastrophic halt. It would have started with an email from Mark Reynolds, her lead investor. I could see the subject line in my mind's eye. Urgent, emergency board meeting. I could imagine the cold dread that would slither down her spine as she read words like provenance of core IP and fraudulent misrepresentation. She'd be frantically trying to think, to rationalize. She destroyed David's notebooks. There was no proof. There couldn't be. And then her phone would ring. The tech lead from her server farm, his voice tight with a panic no amount of money could soothe. Chloe, we have a major problem. The entire network is down. It's not a crash. It's like the core architecture has been uninvented. We're completely locked out. She'd argue, she'd demand, she'd call it impossible. And then he'd say the words Marty and I had chosen carefully. The phrase that would be a knife to her heart. The only thing I can trace is a command initiated by a user called Digital Watering Hole. Do you know what that means? Digital Watering Hole. Her father's old, silly name for his idea. A name she had never, ever spoken to anyone. A name she thought had died with him. That's when the true terror would set in. That's when her phone would buzz again. A text from an unknown number. The first message would be a taunt. Having trouble accessing your empire, Chloe? It seems your foundation was built on sand. And now the tide is coming in. Her hands would be shaking, her mind reeling. Who is this? She typed back, desperation clawing at her. The response would be immediate. A single image loading onto her screen. A perfect, damning photograph of her father's notarized statement of concept, his signature a stark, undeniable accusation. Then, the final blow. The ultimatum. The ghost in your machine is the man you erased. You have 1 hour to call your mother and beg, or I erase Clarion for good. I stood in my silent kitchen, leaning against the counter for support. I could almost feel the walls of her multi-million-dollar penthouse closing in on her. The investors, the servers, the anonymous texter, it was all converging into a perfect storm of her own making. Her $33 million fortune was vanishing before her eyes, and with it, the shiny new life she had chosen over her own family. She had been outmaneuvered completely, and there was only one person who could have the documents, who knew the old name, who had a motive to destroy her. I didn't have to imagine the sob of sheer terror and rage. I heard it perfectly clearly through my phone as it rang in my hand. The caller ID flashed up on the screen, a number I had deleted from my life just days ago. She was calling. I took a deep, steadying breath. I let it ring 3 times. Then I picked the call. I held the phone to my ear, saying nothing at first. I could hear her ragged breathing on the other end, the sharp, panicked inhalations of a trapped animal. Mom. My name was a choked sob, a desperate plea. It was the voice of the little girl who had scraped her knee and needed comforting, not the polished CEO. The sound of it almost broke me. Almost. Chloe. I kept my voice flat, calm, devoid of the tears and desperation she must have been expecting. It was the voice of a woman who was done being hurt. A woman holding all the cards. What have you done? She shrieked, the fear morphing into hysteria. The servers are down. The investors are talking about fraud. They're talking about lawsuits. I would think they are, I replied, my tone cool and measured. I could feel the weight of David's documents in the suitcase beside me, giving me strength. Presenting someone else's life's work as your own generally qualifies as fraud, especially when you use it to secure $33 million. You're destroying me. The scream was raw, stripped of all its society page polish. No, darling, I said, and I let a sliver of icy venom into that term of endearment. I'm not destroying you. I'm simply reminding you of the price of the foundation your house is built on. You tried to throw out the architect. You tried to bury him. But ghosts have a way of coming back, Chloe. What do you want? The question was a whisper now, the fight draining out of her, replaced by pure, undiluted terror. I could picture her, collapsed on the cold marble floor of her empty penthouse, her perfect world in ruins around her. 3 things, I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. First, you will immediately rescind the eviction notice. The house is yours on paper, but it is my home. You will sign it back over to me today, right now. Marty is emailing you the documents as we speak. As if on cue, I heard the faint ping of a notification from her end. I could imagine her scrambling for her laptop, her eyes wide with disbelief at the efficiency of it all. The deed of transfer from a law firm that existed only on paper, courtesy of Marty's extensive network. Second, I continued, not giving her a moment to think, you will publicly announce that the core concept and intellectual property of Clarion was the pioneering work of your father, David Clarion. You will add a permanent, prominent credit to him on the platform's landing page. You will not spin it. You will not pretty it up. You will tell the truth, the whole unvarnished truth. I could hear her mind racing through the phone, the PR executive in her already trying to calculate the damage, to find a way to minimize the humiliation. Perhaps she could frame it as a tribute she'd always planned. And third, I said, my voice sharp and final, cutting through her calculations like a knife, you will transfer $10 million into a trust fund I am setting up in your father's name. The David Clarion Foundation will provide grants to aspiring engineers and inventors who don't have the means to pursue their ideas. Consider it a licensing fee, a very, very overdue one. The silence that followed was so profound I could hear my own heart beating. Then a strangled gasp. 10 million, she screeched. That's insane. That's robbery. Is it? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. It's less than a third of what you made by selling his life's work. And it's a far, far better deal than you'll get from Mark Reynolds and the rest of your investors when they sue you for every single penny you have, plus damages, after I send them the original notarized documents. Not copies, Chloe. The originals. I wonder what the penalty for fraudulent misrepresentation on that scale is. I doubt it's a fine you can pay from your penthouse balcony. The silence returned, heavier this time. I had her. She could see the abyss opening before her. Prison wasn't just a possibility, it was a probability. I wasn't just taking her money. I was offering her a lifeline out of total, utter ruin. Do we have an understanding, Chloe? I asked, each word a hammer blow. I heard a shuddering breath, then a defeated, broken whisper. Yes. Good, I said, no triumph in my voice, only a weary finality. Sign the deed. The ghost in your machine will stand down the moment the money is transferred and your public announcement is made. Don't test me again, Chloe. I held your hand when you learned to walk. I have no problem holding it now as you learn a lesson in humility you should have learned a long time ago. I ended the call without saying goodbye. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. I walked slowly to the mantelpiece and picked up the framed photo of David, taken on our 20th anniversary. He was smiling, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. It's done, David, I whispered, my thumb stroking the cool glass. She'll remember you now. They all will. A single tear for him, for me, for the daughter we'd lost, finally escaped and traced a warm path down my cheek. Then I wiped it away. There was no more time for tears. The news cycle was briefly captivated by Chloe Clarion's emotional press conference. I watched it on the small television in my kitchen. She stood at a podium, dressed in a simple, sober black suit, her face pale but composed. She spoke tearfully of her late father's forgotten genius, of her regret in not honoring him sooner, of her heartfelt desire to correct the historical record. She announced the establishment of the David Clarion Foundation with a personal endowment of $10 million. The business pundits on the cable news shows applauded her accountability and maturity. They called it a stunning act of corporate integrity. They never saw the strings attached. They never saw the ghost in the machine. The deed to the house arrived via courier 2 days later, signed and notarized. I held the paper in my hands, the one that gave me back my home, and I didn't feel joy. I felt a quiet, solemn sense of justice. The $10 million was transferred to the foundation's accounts within the week. Marty, with Iris on standby, had restored the Clarion servers the moment Chloe's press conference concluded. The digital ghost vanished as quietly as it had appeared. Chloe kept her company and the remaining $23 million, but the experience hollowed her out. The respect of her peers felt brittle and false, a performance she had to maintain. She lived in a gilded cage of her own making, in constant, low-grade paranoia, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for my voice to be on the phone again with another demand. The power dynamic between us had been permanently and brutally reversed. For me, life changed in quieter, more profound ways. I paid off the last of the medical debts that had haunted me since David's illness. I secured a comfortable future for myself, one free from the anxiety of outliving my savings. But the real change was the foundation. It became my true life's work, my purpose. I threw myself into it with a passion I hadn't felt since my early nursing days. We funded bright, eager minds from community colleges and inner-city schools, kids with big ideas and empty pockets. With every grant we approved, I felt like I was honoring David, truly honoring him, by paying his genius forward. One afternoon, about a year later, I was on my knees in the garden, my garden digging in the rich, dark earth to plant a new rose bush. The physical labor felt good, honest. The sun was warm on my back. I heard a car slow down on the street, its engine sounding unfamiliar. I looked up, shielding my eyes with a dirt-streaked hand. A sleek, rental sedan was parked at my curb. The driver's side door opened and Chloe got out. She looked different, older, thinner. The sharp, aggressive glamour was gone, replaced by a nervous, almost fragile tension. She was dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, but she looked uncomfortable in them, like she was wearing a costume. "Mom," she said, her voice hesitant, wavering. I wiped my hands on my old gardening apron and slowly got to my feet. Chloe. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just waited. I. I was in the neighborhood, she said, her eyes darting around, unable to meet my gaze. It was a weak, transparent lie. We both knew she had no reason to be in this neighborhood anymore. The foundation is doing well, I said, not inviting her in, not offering her a drink. I stayed by my rose bush. We just approved a grant for a young woman from the Bronx. Her idea for a portable, low-cost water filtration system is remarkable. Your father would have loved it. She flinched at the mention of him, a physical recoil as if I'd struck her. She looked down at the grass, studying it with intense concentration. I know I can't ever. I know what I did was, she trailed off, unable to find words big enough to contain her betrayal. I just wanted to see you. I looked at my daughter, this stranger I had raised and loved and lost. The anger was gone, burned away over the past year, leaving behind a quiet, enduring sadness. There was no victory in this moment, only a profound sense of loss. This is your home, Chloe, I said finally, my voice firm but not unkind. You are always welcome to visit, but you need to understand something. You are not welcome to come here and perform a daughter. You gave up that right when you priced it at $100,000 and an eviction notice. You can't buy that back. Her eyes filled with tears then, and for the first time they seemed real. They weren't the calculated tears of her press conference. They were tears of shame, of loss, of a regret that was perhaps finally truly genuine. They were not for a lost fortune, but for a lost mother. The door is open, I said, turning my back to her and kneeling back down by my roses, a symbol of new growth in the soil of my reclaimed life. But you'll have to figure out how to walk through it. And it won't be as the woman you became. It will have to be as the girl I once knew. I pressed a seed into the earth, covering it gently with soil. If she's even still in there. I didn't watch her drive away. I listened to the car door shut, the engine start, and the sound fade into the distance. I stayed in my garden, nurturing a new beginning, tending to the living things that depended on me, having finally, I hoped, laid an old ghost to rest. What would you have done if you were Martha? Share your thoughts in the comment section.